Hello and welcome to a special edition of Freedom Watch, streaming live at foxnews.com, live from the Great Hall at Drexel University in the city of Philadelphia. I'm your host, Judge Napolitano, here defending freedom, defending your natural rights, defending your right to have a government that stays within the confines of the Constitution. Tonight, we will have four panels here to discuss four very interesting subjects with you. The first is the concept of a just war. Why does war have to be just, and what are the requirements for the war to be just? The second will be the economy. How did we get in the mess that we're in, and why is the government making it worse? The third subject matter will be the loss of liberty. Why is it that the government, which we have hired to protect our liberty, is gradually taking it from us? And our final topic will be, why are we here talking about all of this, and why are so many young people today interested in the freedom movement? Joining me on my first panel is Jacob Hornberger. Jake is the president of the Future for Freedom Foundation. Jake will be here for the entire hour. Next to Jake is Jake Towne. Jake Towne is running as an independent for the United States Congress from the 15th Congressional District in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Next is Pericles Niarchos, who's the president of the Student Liberty Fund here at Drexel University. And at the end is Alexander McCobin, executive director of Students for Liberty. Gentlemen, we have laws in this country, and we have treaties, which the United States is a part of. And the laws and the treaties require that before we use military force, we do so in a just way, that the threat be real, that we have used every means to avoid war, that we don't use any more force than is necessary, and that there be a general consensus that war is necessary, like maybe a declaration of war by the Congress. So, Jake Hornberger, if you accept those principles as the basis for a just war, was the war in Iraq and is the war in Afghanistan by any measure just?
You couldn't find a better example of violation of all those principles than these two wars, Judge. First of all, you've got no declaration of war. That is an absolute requirement under our form of government. The Constitution is the highest law. It applies to our government officials. It requires the president to go to Congress, seek out and secure a declaration of war before he wages war. That makes both of these wars illegal under our form of government. They've gone in, they've killed countless people, they've made life worse for the United States in terms of terrorist retaliation and the potential of that retaliation. We should have never gone into either of these two countries.
Pericles, why does the government like war? Why do presidents like to fight? Why do they like military people to salute them? And why do they like to put young people in harm's way?
I think there's a lot of issues there. The first, I would say, is probably an image of power, conformity, and then there's tons of special interest involved in war. When you get into wars, you start talking about lobbying groups, military-industrial complex, increasing the debt, borrowing money, and all of these things hurt the American people, but a lot of people don't pick up on it. When we're promoting anti-war slogans and we're working with students on campus, one of the major things we talk about is how wars are generally bad for everybody. I mean, war is the biggest indicator of violence. It's the only time when you really see the violence of government in action. And we don't get to see it on our press, but I mean, you see horrific images. So a lot of the student groups we work with, a lot of the organizations that are here really support an anti-war cause.
Jake Towne, you are running for Congress. If you were in the Congress when President Bush spoke and got an authorization to use military force, would you have voted for it?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Well, like you said, it would not meet the requirements for a just war. In terms of Iraq, there were no weapons of mass destruction. It was all a lie. In the terms of Afghanistan, yes, you did have an aggression against the United States of America, but the proper way to attack small groups like that is constitutional letters of marque and reprisal, not actually with a war.
So everybody knows what we're talking about. Letters of marque and reprisal is a provision in the Constitution which would allow the Congress to hire people to go and fight the wars for us, private people to go and get the bad guys when our beef is not with the government, but people in another country that the government of that country can't control.
Absolutely.
Instead, we fought a war that involved 168,000 people, and they want to do it again. Why did the peace candidate, Barack Obama, why is he now under pressure to fight another war?
I think the important question is, why is Barack Obama not following up on his promise to decrease the wars right now? Young people in particular were energized not by just Barack Obama, but other small government candidates, hoping that there was going to be some kind of change. Young people all over the world are tired of being put into wars, either themselves or their friends being sent over to die for their country when they don't want to be over there right now. They thought there was going to be some kind of change when Bush was taken out of office, and they're realizing there is no change. We have a bigger war, and students want to see a libertarian movement be the answer to this instead of big government.
Jake Hornberger, are you surprised that the President of the United States, who ran as the peace candidate, is contemplating the introduction of 40,000 more troops in Afghanistan, on top of the 17,000 he secretly authorized in February, which would bring the total to a number as great as what we had in Iraq?
I'm not surprised. These people do this all the time in both parties. They make their promises. We know they're lies. I am disappointed, though. This is essentially George Bush's third term. As these other speakers are saying, there's no change here. It's as if Bush were in office. We've got all the violations of civil liberties. We've got the aggression going on. Now it's even worse. We got the drone attacks in Pakistan. We now have the drug war assassinations that are taking place in Afghanistan.
All right, let me stop you, because I know you know a great deal about this, because you and I talked about it the other day. There are some who argue, the Vice President of the United States among them, that a safe way to fight a war is not to have boots on the ground, I'm using the military phrase, but to have intelligence officials and special operations units tell us what the drones should attack. The drones, these manless vehicles that fly in the sky that are set off 10,000 miles away in Langley, do they help or do they hurt?
They're hurting us tremendously. What they're doing is they're targeting people that they are convinced are so-called terrorists. No trial, no hearings, no arrests, just target their house with a missile. In that house is their wife, their children, relatives, and friends, and there is an absolute total indifference to the deaths of all those innocent people.
Could that possibly be characterized as just? The idea of not shooting somebody who's shooting at you, but blowing up a house because there's a bad guy in there, irrespective of who else is in that house.
There's no way I can foresee that as being just. Something I would emphasize, which Congressman Ron Paul has emphasized a lot, is the concept of blowback. And we say we're fighting terrorism, we say we're decreasing the amount of terrorists, but over time, all we're doing is increasing them. I mean, if a bomb lands on your family, you're probably going to be pretty motivated to seek revenge. So I would encourage avoid war at all costs. You know, just wars would be few and far between.
Alexander, are the young people, whether on the Drexel campus or elsewhere, who voted for Senator Barack Obama to be president, shocked that his administration is continuing so many of the policies of George W. Bush that some folks can call it Bush 3?
Absolutely. This is actually a great way to promote the student movement for liberty, because people are realizing that a politician is a politician no matter what they're willing to say beforehand. You see a lot of students actually claiming to be libertarian today who once were Democrats or hardcore liberals because they believe that big government is big government in any sense. The only way to get ourselves out of the war is to promote a philosophy of liberty and to respect people's rights no matter what country they're a part of.
Jake Towne, why do you think the Congress doesn't have the fortitude to declare war? That they simply enact these resolutions which give the president some type of power, but it's not a real declaration of war?
That's a good question, Judge. The current Congress is a bunch of warmongers. I mean, there's a famous essay written by a fellow that grew up very close to here called Smedley Butler. He wrote a famous essay called War is a Racket.
General Smedley Butler.
Correct. From the United States Marine Corps, two-time winner of the Congressional Medal of Honor. And in that book, he goes through all the American corporations at the time, and there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of the military-industrial complex funds a lot of these politicians that are running for office, and they really don't know what war is. They're a bunch of chicken hawks.
Do you all agree with me on this? War is the health of the state. And whatever government declares war gets bigger, stronger, fatter, collects more taxes, and takes more of our freedom. Jake?
One of the greatest quotes I've ever come across is Madison's quote that says, James Madison, that says, of all the enemies to liberty, war is the greatest, because it encompasses all of the others.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Thanks for the discussion of the just war.